We're live. Welcome to the Best in Slot podcast, a Warcraft podcast by the community for the community. I'm your main host, Sparty, and I'm here with my co-host, Midgettes. Midgettes, how are you this fine evening?
It's a great Sunday, enjoying my fall coffees, so I'm in a great mood. How about you?
You having a fall coffee Sunday night?
Yes, it's fall. It's time for coffee. It's the best coffee of the year.
At nighttime?
Nighttime, daytime, fall time.
Oh, excellent. I mean, I guess I'm not the only one that does nighttime coffees and still is able to fall asleep. Awesome. So this is episode 42, and today we'll be talking about more of the cost of raiding. So last week we talked about the actual monetary cost of raiding and the millions of gold players and guilds spend with raiding. This one's going to cover some of the stuff behind the scenes from a leadership perspective, as well as the time investment with respect to raiding. There's so much that goes on into every boss fight, and as a player, as a raid lead, even support members have to work together to kill that boss. So let's start off with what's new in the community.
Well, we have to start off with a joke first, whether I like it or not.
Okay, so some of you guys have heard this joke. This is actually a joke that I'm going to borrow from one of our apps that said it during an interview. Are you ready?
As ever,
if there's any blondes out there that are going to get offended, I'm sorry you're going to get offended. Sorry, you can't control your feelings. So there's three blondes walking along, and the first one looks down and says, "Hey, those are deer tracks." Second blonde says, "No, those are not deer tracks. Those are bear tracks." Third blonde says, "No, you're both wrong. Those are human tracks." Then all three get hit by a train.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not necessarily a dad joke, but it's still a pretty good joke.
Oh
I thought it was awesome.
goodness.
If you're blind, it's okay. I'm sure you have fun. So we also have the world race, right? So the world race is still new in the community. The leaderboards are out there. Have you taken a look at this? The leaderboards, both Alliance and Horde side?
No, yeah, I took a look at them today. There's more Horde than Alliance, but I was very happy to see that Sloot and Future killed the boss.
Yeah, I mean, how can you not cheer for Sloot and Future and those guys out there? They're fantastic dudes. Yeah, so they got world 19th Horde. Yeah, I guess so. I don't know what the ranking there was. So there's how many Horde guilds now? So there are 22 Horde guilds in the world that have cleared it, and 4 Alliance guilds, because I guess everyone's too afraid to play Alliance. I mean, Alliance Master Race, right?
I'm having more fun watching the Overtime Police. Have you seen them?
Oh my god. Okay, so there's a satirical Twitter account, and I guess that there was some hoopla and some discussion over guilds that are raiding over their extended hours, and I totally missed it until somebody mentioned it in my stream. But basically, guilds that are advertising 3 days a week, like that's just raiding 3 days a week, but they actually raid 5 days a week, and they do these quotational optional raids or whatever. But they only say they raid 3 days a week, right? So they don't really disclose that, and so they're trying to hide it. I don't know, whatever. I mean, raid whatever you want. I don't give a shit, but to hide it is just, it's silly. So there's a Twitter account called Overtime Police who is going around calling guilds out for raiding extra days, extra time, all that fun stuff, which is absolutely hilarious. This is one of the best satirical or parody accounts out there. Check it out. It's really funny. I mean, it's a non-serious thing, but it's really funny.
Oh, I don't know. It's pretty serious.
Well, maybe it's serious. I mean, people are taking it quite seriously.
They're breaking the law and everything else.
He's giving out tickets for people raiding overtime, right? Like, you're raiding over your hours. It's overtime. So you get overtime tickets.
Anyway, I've had more fun with that this week, just seeing the various posts.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome.
And I'll be curious to see how long they keep going, because they're definitely out there getting all of the people doing those extra games. Well, and it's interesting watching the byplay. So I've actually just been sitting on the page watching the replays and the responses and having fun. But I'm easily amused.
Yeah, no, it's funny stuff. And, one guild says, "Hey, we're switching days because somebody couldn't attend. Here's the proof of our logs." And then he lets the ticket slide. And it's funny. It's just some silly stuff in the Warcraft raiding community.
Well, sometimes you have to lighten it up a little bit.
Oh, for sure.
As a reminder, in case you didn't get it, Warcraft devs wanted to remind you that data mining is not always accurate.
What? What do you mean it's not?
It's shocking,
if I find it on the PTR or the alpha, it must come true.
Right. Well, and what happened is they showed that they were reducing the costs on alchemy. And he says, we're working on a different plan for Alchemy. And we'll bring it to the PTR in the coming weeks. They said this is a good example of things may not always be what you'll see live.
Mm-hmm.
The best response to that was somebody came back and said, "Okay, great. What are you doing? Because this is ridiculous."
So just take a step back here. So didn't the devs say, "Hey, we're going to make some changes because of the whole exorbitant costs of raiding and flasks and potions?" So my understanding is they're still reducing it, right? Or are they changing it back?
I don't know what they're doing. They haven't responded. There hasn't been a lot of there's been a lot of community discussion about it. But there hasn't been a lot of developer response to the cost of rating. The only thing that they did was increase the drop rate of anchorweed.
Interesting. So they can make more gold off of it, and they have more of it. Interesting. Yeah, like most things, lack of communication leads to discord, and yeah, I guess we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, it's something to be watching. Again, sometimes it's not always the information you get, but the responses that are informative.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. And sometimes, yeah, it's the responses that make a difference. So BlizzCon virtual ticket, there's been a bit of an uproar on this one as well, which it's been mixed responses. There was one from Jesse Cox, which I didn't agree with. I think he said something like, so basically, just take a step back. BlizzCon virtual ticket, you get access to Warcraft Classic, the demo for the first 20 levels. Congrats, you get to play a 15-year-old game for 20 levels. There's the War Banner and War Mantle, which are the banner things, right, like the guild standards. But unfortunately, there's no pet or mount this time around. I think that's the biggest disappointment, right, with the BlizzCon ticket.
It is for me. I mean, one of the things is there's always been really super cool pets or mounts, and I was really excited with the BlizzCon virtual tickets when they first came out because I got to get them and I get to go to BlizzCon. Make no mistake, I still enjoy the BlizzCon virtual ticket. I watch all of the panels. I get to see the announcements. I spend most of my weekend with you guys in BlizzCon when you're all there. And so it's fun for me to be able to see that and participate in it. But I have to say I was sad that there was not a pet this year.
Yeah, I mean, even the whatever crappy Murloc pets we get, it's something. It's a little bit of extra tangible reward. It would have been nice to have. So Jesse Cox made a point where, people making all this uproar on the forums, that does nothing, do it with just not buying the ticket, right? That's how you pay, or that's how you respond. Well, not necessarily. By people being upset and vocalizing it, that also affects the bottom line, because if people voice their displeasure on certain things, then that has a trickling effect where other people will listen to that feedback and therefore also not buy whatever else is going on, right? So it's important to voice that displeasure, or whatever issues you have, obviously in a constructive manner, not yelling at the devs or the CMs or whatever. But yeah, I mean, there's ways to get around to go about it, and if you don't like it, okay, don't buy the virtual ticket. I'm mixed on it. I have zero interest in Warcraft Classic, playing that game again. War Mantles are pretty cool, but that's about it.
Well, see, I'm getting it for the BlizzCon virtual ticket. So I'm buying the virtual ticket so that I can
for the
go
ticket
to
itself.
BlizzCon.
Yeah.
Right. So I've already bought it and I'm going as I have every year when I haven't gone to BlizzCon because I enjoy what they put out there.
For sure.
I don't agree. I am a big one of, if I don't like somebody, I talk with my feet or I don't buy it. But
what does that mean? You talk with your feet? How does one talk with their feet?
I talk with my feet. I go somewhere else. So if I don't like service at a restaurant, I walk somewhere else. Or if I don't like something on the television, I turn it off and watch something else. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to tell people that I'm not pleased with the service. So I'm disappointed. But I still think I'll have a good time. I'll check out WoW Classic potentially, but I'm sort of liking my creature comforts now. So I'm not sure I want to go back to the days where I only had 60 gold and I couldn't afford a mount. But, there you have it. But the goodie bag is really cool. They have a BlizzCon book and I already bought that too. Blizzard got a lot of money this month between, pirate ships and pets and BlizzCon tickets and now the goodie bag. But they have a BlizzCon book that has all of the memories of BlizzCon. So you get to see some of the winners of the cosplay and
Oh, cool.
special events and things of that nature. So I went ahead and grabbed that as well.
Interesting. It'd be nice if they inside that BlizzCon book they had like a Blizzard Bear, thing for you to get, or one of
Yeah,
those.
you do know I've started a whole nother raid team of baby blizzard bears named Midget.
Ah, well, good. I mean, we need to. I don't know. I know you're missing a couple of those last mounts and pets, and it's so hard to get them out. Wasn't one of the developers giving one out, or what? Who was it?
No, you can't get the baby blizzard bear. It was a 4th anniversary reward.
Okay.
I'm sad. I missed it by a month. Trust me, I know exactly how many days I missed it by.
So there's something else you mentioned. So the other thing with BlizzCon, there's a build a panel thing, and so this only came up recently, or at least I only recently found out about it. What is this thing? Build a panel 2018.
Well, they're involving the community in creating a panel. And so we just found it on round 4, but they've been voting on what you would like for a BlizzCon panel. So this far, they've decided to have it focus on World of Warcraft's lore. It's going to be hosted by Skarin DePaul.
The guy that is Reinhardt.
Yes.
So that's the coolest part of the panel so far. So it's about lore, and then what?
Well, now they're having a new voting for the bonus question. So I don't know. You went and looked at the bonus question. So this is something that they'll ask their panelists. So what do you found one of the questions? You liked them.
So again, this is a Warcraft lore panel hosted by the guy that does Reinhardt, an Overwatch thing. Why don't we just get, I don't know, the winner of StarCraft 2005 to host it? I don't see the link. I mean, I'm sure he's a cool guy, great voices, but like these lore things, what creature found in Azeroth scares you the most? Should I roll my eyes back for this one? Would you rather fight a griffin-sized murloc or 100 murloc-sized griffins? What? We're voting on this? Like, this is round 4? There's only 400 votes, so I'm guessing they're trying to keep this under wraps because this is like... This is the panel that is so far in the back room that no cameras are allowed. Like, there's no one going to be watching this thing.
Oh, you're so positive. I thought it was cute.
I think it's... Number one, it's a missed opportunity, right? There's only 456 voters of the millions of voters that we have out there potentially, playing Warcraft games or Blizzard games rather. 400 voters. First time I hear about this thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm under a rock. Has anybody else been paying attention to this thing, or is it just me? That's I don't know.
Well, that's what happens when you let the community decide. Okay. At least 400 of the community members.
Well, if the community is going to decide stuff, they need to name a boat Bodie McBoatface, right? Like the Arctic Explorer ship that was supposed to be named that.
Well, they should do it your way, is what you're trying to say.
Well, if they're going to do community stuff, do it community properly.
Oh, okay. Well, while we're talking about things that are amusing, Did you know we now have a WeCore that reminds you not to forget your seals or your coins?
Yeah, Zarania, one of our guildies, Zarania has everything. He'll make a WeCore for whatever we need, which is incredible. Don't forget your coins and seals, WeCore. We've got another one here because people keep forgetting to buff. You're a priest. Your job is to buff fortitude, right? I mean, and obviously top the meters, but buff. Right? Your fortitude drops, someone needs to get res. There's a WeCore that says, hey, somebody in your raid does not have fortitude. Buff them. Warrior, same thing. Intellect, same thing. Right? Like, it's awesome. There's a WeCore for basically everything, anything, and everything you can do. It's great.
I know, but I just laughed. So now we have WeCores. I would like a WeCore to remind me to pick up my cream from the grocery store, please.
I'm sure we could do that on your phone. Like a phone
probably.
WeCore.
I imagine Zarania could probably do it. So did you get in and do any time walking this week?
Yeah, I did one time walking last night. I'm like, okay, I got to do an hour of time walking here. I'm only getting a normal piece of gear because I'm hoping for a Titan Forged something. Maybe I'll get lucky and get an Azurite piece. Probably not, not going to happen with my luck. The big thing, though, is they removed the coin. So the big reason a lot of players were doing time walking was for the extra coin, which turned into artifact power or gold, but it was still a chance. There was still hope by doing 1 hour of time walking per week. And yeah, you get more time walking badges for all the toys and mounts and stuff, but I wanted my one bonus coin or seal. It seems like they're potentially trying to limit the gear, but I don't know, with personal loot and everybody being upset right now, our gear is already limited as is.
Well, I did get a chess piece. It
You got
was
a chess piece?
I did. It was
So there's a chance.
350. There is a chance. It was 355. And it
Oh.
was on my, but I already had a 370.
Oh,
So
of
because
course.
I was doing war fronts and I got my chess piece there.
Interesting.
So
So
I'm doing just fine with loot.
okay, so there's a chance. So I got to do another 4 dungeons after this podcast. Fantastic. Maybe I'll get
Well,
something better than my
at
340
least they
shoulders.
fixed it because it was pretty. It's still not. I don't think it's still tuned quite right,
Hmm.
but it's a lot better than it was at the beginning of the week.
Well, we've had these issues the entire time where things are overtuned. Apparently, there's a boss in Stonecore or something that was way overtuned. The other thing to add, though, is your legendaries, guys. Your legendaries from the past expansions, they do work in time walking. They make things a ton easier. Don't use the World's Drainer Ring because that one sucks, but your Mist of Pandaria Cloak, as well as your legendaries from Legion, use them. Go blow stuff up. It'll make
Oh,
things super
really?
easy. Yeah, I heard that the other day or this morning.
I would have to pull all of that stuff out of my bank and remember that.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe Czar can make me a weak aura for it.
Hey, you're going to time walking? Well, then put on your legendaries.
Well, and as you know, Wing 2 opened in the LFR,
Yes, I definitely know that because I jump into LFR all the time.
right? Actually, while Warcraft Stats had a funny joke about that. He likes to play with Kane. He said something about we don't do LFR. So,
Yeah,
we've already
kinda.
covered that.
Yeah.
And I got through the first 2 bosses.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got to the trash right before Zool.
Oh yeah, that big
And
pile of trash.
and we went through 6 tanks,
Just
and
for trash?
a complete reset of the raid like 5 times. I finally gave up. I did not get Zool done because we couldn't get past the trash.
Wow, that's crazy. That's insane. That the LFR group couldn't get through trash. Did you get determination stacks at least?
I don't know. I gave up. I
I
just,
guess
I
not.
was
Huh?
like, I just can't do this anymore. By the time we lost, the 6th tank, I was like, okay. Because I was like, I just want to get it done. It was a goal for my team this week. And I was sort of just playing by myself, which I do sometimes. And so I just jumped in to do it. And it was much more painful than I expected. And I'll finish it tomorrow, maybe.
Well. Island expeditions. Have you been enjoying those so far? Have you
I
done?
love them.
See, me
I
too.
actually got a very, very pretty sword.
Oh, I
Yes. So now I have to level my mage so that she can use the sword.
oh,
But they have
I've been
some
vendoring that
great.
stuff.
You have not been vendoring those swords. You do know they sell on the auction house for like 100K.
What?
Tell me you have not been vendoring
I
any of the
1000%
appearances.
have been vendoring these blue swords, sabers, spears that I've been getting. I'm like, I can't use this shit. Off to the scrapper you go. So
Oh
I've been
no,
throwing away gold.
Sparty, you've been just scrapping gold.
Well, viewers and listeners, don't do what Sparty just did and threw away gold.
And of course, there's all the pets, and I've still got pets, and there's mounts, but I haven't seen a mount yet. And
Yeah.
apparently, there is a way to get better drops, and that's why it was brought up, because Wowhead has covered how the island expedition items work.
Okay. So the Wowhead thing here, how it works basically is they have to kill the rares, right? So there's different themed expeditions and islands, and when it sort of lines up, you kill these rares. And so what people are doing now is just doing normals. The horde or the other team is not going to win because it's on normal and it's so incredibly easy. You just basically run around hunting rares, right, to get all those things. 'Cause
Right.
there's a chance to get
And the different types. So pirates drop the pirate pet and things of this nature. And they're just starting to figure that all out. So they've come up with all of these tips to get the most or the maximize the rewards out of the island expeditions.
Gotcha. Interesting. But the other thing that Wahoo came up with was the updated guides for classes with rating tips. So for those of you that use Wowhead for the respective guides and what traits I should do, what talents, for a mythic setting, they've actually gone through these and given you what percentage of talents are being used for a specific encounter, right? So for Talak, I know that 5% of paladins have chosen to go with Light's Hammer as a talent. Which Azurite traits they go with, the top trinkets that they go with, based off percentage, which is really, really awesome. And it shows you exactly, what their setup is like. So it's really awesome. I mean,
it's actually a widget with Warcraft logs.
Yeah.
And
oh,
so
it's a
it's
widget
coming
within
straight
there.
off. Yeah, it's coming straight out of Warcraft logs. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's populating for the mythic encounters. And normally, back in Legion, we would have to go look at the logs and see what the talents they were using and whatnot. And it's all on the top of your class spec. I know I was looking at the Holy One. They have video guides on how to heal and what talents you should be using, when you should be using this. And they've gotten quite advanced with their guides. I'm very impressed.
Interesting. That's really good. So moving on to the crux of today's topic is really raiding and time, right? The time that it takes to raid, what's involved with those kind of things. We've talked about this kind of stuff in the past, but yeah, I mean, let's just get right into it.
All right. Well, I need a raid.
Well, you don't have an achievement,
but I need a raid to get an achievement.
Then go raid.
But that's why I'm here.
So go get the achievement. Get the achievement.
How am I going to get an achievement without a raid?
Well, go raid then.
Oh, for crying out loud.
So for those of you familiar with the meme, that's exactly how it goes. Basically, it's that catch-22 of, you want to raid? Okay, get an achievement. Well, how am I going to get the achievement if I don't raid? Well, then go raid. So obviously, you need to really put in the effort. Raiding isn't just showing up to kill a boss. There's so much more to it. As an individual player, we are putting ourselves out there for others to look at every moment of your gameplay, for a 5-10 minute encounter, right? People are looking at that. Your teammates are looking to you to see if you're standing in the fire, maximizing your DPS, your HPS, whatever, looking at your tank positioning or taunts, or even if your classes and your bosses. If you're pugging, people make use of things like those achievements, right? People are very familiar with, their Raider IO score or, link achievement in order to come here, must have this item level, whatever. And so raiding isn't really for the weak of heart. That being said, though, where it's more with respect to mythic raiding, people want to raid normals, heroics, do whatever you want. You can do mythic raiding as well in a pretty low-key setting as well. But every level of raiding, from normal to heroic to mythic raiding, has a level of performance that they're looking for in terms of their team members.
Well, Sparty, what are the DJ's expected level of performance?
So we've actually outlined sort of what we expect of each player, whether it be their Azurite power. So for instance, the Azurite power for the week, it's sort of where we expect it. We expect, certain levels of, let's say Warcraft logs percentiles, right? They're not the be and end all of everything, but in a very general setting, we want players to achieve a certain standard and do well in a raid setting, right? And that's typically, the purple parses, right? Let's call it purple parse, 75th percentiles for a DPS. That's generally where you want it. That being said, and we've talked about this on previous podcasts, there's context, right? If you're doing those bitch jobs, you're never going to get it, right? If there's too much DPS saturating on AoE, you're never going to get those high parses, right? So with that in mind, we do want players to perform at that high level with respect to their class, spec, and item level. So that's us.
And so when you talk about that, and let's say I wanted to apply for Jesters.
Okay.
What would be the best way for me to get an idea if I've even got a chance? I'm a really good healer, but I know when I heal with you guys, I suck really bad.
So it's funny. I mean, because just the other day, I think it was the last night or early this morning, somebody whispers me and says, "Hey, are you still looking for a hunter?" I'm like, "Yeah, potentially an exceptional hunter." And he says, "Oh, I'm that person." I'm like, "Really? That's fantastic." And he's like, "Here, look at my logs." And he's got a 1 percentile on Talak and an 18 percentile on Mother. And I'm like, "Okay, so can you explain why you have the lowest percentile on Talak?" He's like, "Oh, it was my internet." Okay, fantastic. So why should we take you if your internet's going to be unreliable? Well, I was playing in a hurricane. Okay, fine. I'll give you that. Fine. You were playing in a hurricane.
At least he came to raid during a hurricane.
That's awesome.
We've got people who miss it because they have a headache. So, I'm going to give him kudos for that.
Listen, I played through a flu last week, whenever it was, just for progression. And so then I look at his heroic parses. I'm like, okay, his maybe he had a really bad night. That's fine. Let's look through his heroic parses, and they're all like blues and greens, and it's not really at the level that I would want of a player. He's just not ready for this level of rating, period. Right? And I don't want to discourage him, but he's just not ready. So I tell him, go get some parses, work on your stuff, look at those resources, and then look at applying to a guild at this level. So if you're not ready there yet, like if you're looking to apply midgets to death jesters, I would look at our healers to see how you'd compare with with yourself. Are you able to keep up with these guys? If not, maybe they're doing something wrong that you can be doing better, right? How do you take that spot from players?
Well, and how do you, because I know from watching behind the scenes,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll talk more about it when we get into the leadership side of it, but there are hours of reviews on whether it's on a personal level or a leadership level or a raid leader level that go through everything from the parses to why this encounter didn't work. So how do you give that information? I mean, there are people out there that come into the Death Jesters application box.
Yep.
And I did that for years, and so I've seen them. I can tell the difference between somebody who's mythic rated at a level of DJs or higher versus somebody who has never done it before. And it's interesting because they'll come and they'll have, okay, so for example, especially at the end of a tier, look at a Legion. Well, I'm 11 of 11 Mythic Raider. Well, you were 11 Mythic Raider 3 months later with, 20 or 30 or 40 eye levels higher. And that doesn't make you a better player necessarily. It just means you outgeared the encounter.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. And you said absolutely correctly there. Even though you're 11 out of 11 Mythic on Antaurus, what was the date of your achievement? It's one of the questions that we often ask is, okay, cool. So you've cleared all the bosses. Well, what, WoW Progress rank did you achieve with your guilds, right? There's a huge jump going from the expectations of a World 1000 guild to a World 500 guild and a World 200 guild, right? The expectations, the time commitment, the level of play is much different between those three types of guilds.
Yeah. And how, as a player, do you get there, though? I mean, so because we've brought in people and we've had players in the past that have come from your stream, and
Mm-hmm.
some of them have been normal heroic raiders who have just really excelled and made it on the team.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get there as a viewer right now? I want an app for Death Jesters, or I want an app for Future, or keep going higher. How do you get there?
Again, are you ready for the NFL to jump into professional sports? Is that what you want to do? Fantastic. But are you ready for it now? No, you probably don't have, the body type, the workout, the experience, all that stuff to play at that level right now. Not saying it's not possible, but you have to work your way up to getting there. You don't just jump from, hey, I started playing Warcraft. I want to jump in this Lootbags guild because I think I can do it. That's great that you think you can do it, but there's a lot of, there's a lot of investment in these players, and there's a lot of time used up on interviews and all that stuff to get people up to that level of play. But how do you get yourself up to that level? You use all the resources that you have at your disposal, whether it be discords or class discords or going through Warcraft logs and listening to streams and watching other players and talking to players. There's so many things that players have at their disposal, right, to use. And part of it is not being stubborn and being willing to change, but you need to make that effort to rate at that level. And yeah, it gets easier through item level increases and through nerfs and that kind of stuff, but you have to also be in the right mindset of what it is that mythic rating is. There's lots of things to do. One of the things that we do is we use an audit sheet. A lot of guilds we use as well. It shows an audit sheet of how people are doing with respect to their item levels, their mythic pluses, and necks, right? So we've set a weekly goal of, do this. People sometimes hate Mythic Pluses. I'm not a huge fan of Mythic Pluses. I like World Quests. People hate World Quests, and that's fine. So do whatever you want for those expectations. But yeah, we have our own goals set. And, sometimes players, aren't meeting that. What if players aren't meeting that standard? Well, it's important to have those conversations with players than just cutting them. Oh, you didn't meet the neck requirement for the week? You don't have the item level requirement for the week? You're cut. Well, why? Well, you know what? Sparty is wearing 340 shoulders. I'm wearing 355 helm, so a normal helm because Azurite luck sucks. So my item level's quite low. That being said, though, I'm keeping up with my limited time with everything else, with neck and rating and, guild and that kind of stuff. So I had a couple conversations with a couple of my players who were really behind in terms of our expectations, and it's a conversation of, hey, you're really behind. We really want to see you caught up here. And yeah, they say, I've had a lot of real life stuff happening. I'm gonna do my best to catch up. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. Okay, that's easy. That's how you have those conversations with players. You don't just say, oh, you didn't meet the cut. Well, then you're cut, and that's it. So.
Well, and it's something that we cover regularly
Mm-hmm.
because people either come to us and say, why aren't my read leads holding everyone to the same level of play? And oftentimes it's because they're missing those behind the
Yeah,
conversations.
you're missing those conversations. And you know what? Sometimes you're not privy to all those conversations, or those are private conversations. But if you have a question, so midgets, if you have a question why I'm not holding so and so to the standard, or why they're getting a bit of a pass, just ask. I'm not gonna sit you because you asked, right? It's okay to have that question. For instance, we had a tank reroll for us, right? Super awesome that he can reroll a class entirely from his warrior to his monk. Okay, I'm not expecting him to catch up, within a week to the same neck levels and gear levels that the rest of us are. He's putting in a ton of time already, with multiple tank characters. So yeah, they'll get a bit of a leeway here, and that's totally fine. That's reasonable, right? It's unreasonable to expect people to switch over on a dime when they're doing your guild a favor too.
Well, and you've got to remember, especially when you're working on progression, and I think we all forget it because when we get into farm content or we get further into the tier and we outgear it, we're a lot more casual because the boss has been killed. We're just getting here, getting loot. We bring in other people that we may not.
Mm-hmm.
But during progression, you're bringing in the best people to get the job done. And I think on some of the bosses, I've heard that in this tier we need 7 rogues, 4
Oh my
warlocks.
god, it's ridiculous. Don't get me
bring
started
any
with Zool.
shamans or shadow priests.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's silly. Part of it is tuning, and it's been a little bit of a disappointing tier with respect to the bosses and tuning and bugs and that kind of stuff, and that's fine. But yeah, I mean, things get easier as your item level increases. Does it improve? Does that really mean that you've improved as a player? Right? Not necessarily, right? I mean, has your button mashing improved, or is that just your item level, right? Sort of carrying you through it. So yeah, I mean, progression and new content sort of answer that question: how well you're doing in a new setting, rather than blowing through stuff when you're overgeared in farm content.
Well, and the encounter at that point. So there's a lot of things that come in there. So what 2 tips would you give to a new player that wanted to improve their gameplay, or an existing player? And they're either struggling on keeping up on their class, or they're seeing the bench far more than they want to. What sort of advice would you give them?
The first one is really make sure you have the mental and the time commitment. So the mental fortitude as well as the time commitment to rate at that level. It takes a lot of time. It's more so than just the 10 and a half hours a week of rating, whatever your guild advertises and hopefully sticks to. There's also, the outside of rating, the log analysis, the prep, all that stuff that goes into it. So make sure you're able to commit to that time and constantly look to improve, right? There's always something you can do to improve every single night. And whether you're going through your old replays or you're looking through logs, you should always be looking for, well, what can I do better this time around, right? Even if you get that 100th percentile parse, what could you do better? Because there is guaranteed something to do better each time, and you must have that mindset.
Absolutely. But on the flip side, and this is where we're going to spend the bulk of our time, we have what is involved as a leader, whether a raiding guild or the guild, and what you have to do as well as keep up to raid.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move into that, because there are hours. I mean, I sit there, I participate in a lot of these chats with you during my workday.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got hours every day in watching you guys going over logs, or what could be done better on the strat, or who you're interviewing. So let's talk about the time investment, because just raiding, just being able to log on and raid and focus on your tune is very, very time consuming, especially at a mythic level. But you add in the leadership responsibilities behind that, of course, in your case, of not 1, but 2 guilds. And you're helping me with the weekend team. So, and you have a new baby on the way, and
Yeah, I don't
I'm
know.
not sure how you do any of it.
I think once many of the viewers and other raiders get to a level where they're having kids and having adult responsibilities, they're gonna wonder, how did Sparty ever do this? How did he ever make all of these things work? Um, and I mean, there's good reasons why. So yeah, so going into a leadership setting, there's a lot of things to consider, and like you said, there's a lot of discussion throughout the day of, well, what are we doing? What is our goal for the night? How are we just in compositions? We're going through these logs, and it's not just things we're doing right at the end of the night, or things we're doing right before the raid. It's often things we're looking at on our lunch breaks at work or whatever, to adjust the composition. So, for instance, we were wiping on Zekvaz, and we should have downed it the first night or second night we were on it, but we just had a weird comp, and we weren't nimble enough. We weren't flexible enough to adjust in composition. We should have. Some people were underperforming. We should have swapped those out. And at this level, you need to be practical and pragmatic. You can't be, okay, well, I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. You need to do whatever it takes to get those things done. So we weren't nimble enough, and that was a good lesson learned for us. The next night we came back, we one-shot it. It was super nice. But those kinds of adjustments happened overnight, and there were strat adjustments and positioning stuff and cooldowns, and those things make it a lot easier. So you're doing a lot of work behind the scenes every single night as a leadership team or as a raid leader. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I can't do it all anymore because I have so many time commitments. But thankfully, we have a really good leadership team that is working out these kinds of things with me.
Well, and it's interesting because you used the Vectis example,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't a quick fix. There was hours of discussion
For sure.
the next couple of days, because I think it was Wednesday and then to the next Monday, if
Mm-hmm.
I remember correctly. So there's often hours in there. But how do you start looking at the time investment, and coming up with ways to make the team grow? And at this point, you've had to, and I don't think it was something you were very good at, share responsibilities,
Yes, delegating.
because there is so much to
Mm-hmm.
do. So let's talk a little bit about just an average raid week of, from Tuesday reset, back again to Monday, again, just with progression. Let's just sort of look at an average raid week for you.
Yeah, for sure. So let's say Tuesday. So Tuesday, it starts out throughout the day. It doesn't start at the raid evening. It starts throughout the day of, well, we're going to probably set our compositions for the night. What do we want to have for Mythic? I mean, since we don't do Heroic on our raid schedules anymore, we have those on sale runs. What is our goal for Mythic that week? We want to go through these bosses. This is our end goal for the week. Great, we're going to set that up. What is our end goal for the night? How are we thinking? What do you think in terms of compositions, players? Which healers do we want to give a chance, or which DPS do we want to give a chance? Which applicants are going to keep in as well for some of the farm stuff, and then setting up some of our cooldowns, getting a lot of the stuff set up ahead of time. Again, we only have 10.5 hours of raiding to be done per week. A lot of the setup stuff has to be done prior to raid, so cooldowns, all that stuff should be mostly set up well in advance. Beyond that, I mean, we're looking at applications internally. We're giving feedback. We're going through our own inbox, and then just getting ready to raid. So the in-game stuff then happens of getting your coins, getting all your stuff. Bank is stocked. That's sort of on Midgettes' end, and then we get into our 10.5 hours a week of raiding, and then pretty much every single night at the end we have interviews. For the ones that do make it to an interview portion, we're spending another 30, 45 minutes, an hour per evening interviewing one or two players. So that's typically what it looks like on a regular Tuesday. Wednesdays are pretty much the same. Thursdays we have sale runs. Fridays, Saturdays, we do more interviews because we have more time allotted to those. That being said, though, a lot of the players, they like to raid on the weekend teams. So quite a few of them raid on Friday and Saturday as well. Sunday, I do my podcast. That being said, though, there's still lots of work in between, whether it be apps or interviews or log analysis or personal stuff. So I'm, going through our own logs on a nightly basis, and again, doing research on what other guilds are doing right now and where we can improve our own stuff. So that kind of stuff is constantly going on, and you're living it and you're breathing the kind of raiding atmosphere and raiding stuff that is going on constantly.
Well, and then you've got to deal with all of the I don't even know how to put it, the individual player or raider issues, whether it's they're not performing well, they're not keeping up, they're doing great, remembering to tell them they're doing great, working through the fact that they might not have been in for the last two bosses because they're a shadow priest and we don't like shadow priests this
Yeah.
tier, or whatever. And so you add all of that in, or they're frustrated because a night didn't go well, and up to doing the morale. I mean, it's a full-time job just
Oh,
to keep up.
absolutely. No, it's an absolute full-time job to do all this rating stuff, right? And then there's the GM stuff on top of it, and there's a lot of, lots of communications behind the scenes that need to get done, and planning for the future, all that stuff. So yeah, it's absolutely a full-time job that you don't get paid for, but somebody has to do it, right? It's well, why are we doing it? Well, for the team, for the players, right? We're not doing this for ourselves. We can be doing other things for ourselves, but that's part of the huge time commitment that rating essentially is.
Well, and there's always something. I mean, just within this week, because I take Sundays off,
Mm-hmm.
and there was at least 3 issues today. So there's always something coming up,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's, poor performance, or somebody that probably shouldn't have done something and did, or loot. Why? Okay, we had a loot situation this weekend.
Why are there loot issues?
And
It's
I have,
personal loot.
right. Why are there loot issues? And I put that completely 100% on the leadership.
Yeah, and you know why? Why do issues occur? Because of one simple thing: poor communication. Why are so many people upset with Blizzard's Azurite stuff? Yes, poor design, but why are they so upset about all those other things, right? Whether it be the 6-month pass or the BlizzCon stuff, a lot of it just comes down to really poor communication. That's it, right? If you communicate these things early and effectively and make people feel like they've been heard, that's totally fine, right? You're going to alleviate so many issues if you just communicate often and well as much as you can.
Okay. So let's talk about recruiting and how you grow and maintain your roster. Because, back in the day, and I'm not sure where the Death Jester goals are, but I think you still are working on staying within that top US 100, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Back in the day when you were shooting for US 50, there's less rating, but I don't see that anything else has changed in maintaining this roster. Let's talk about all the time you have in just getting the players into the team.
Yeah, so we have a lot of different recruitment avenues, and we've talked about active and passive recruitment in the past. We have our recruitment posts and WoW progress and word of mouth and all that stuff in terms of how we get our players. But they'll go through an application inbox. We have our recruitment officer that deals with them. The good ones get posted on our forums. We decide to interview them. So it's already a huge investment of people. One person reading through them, they're okay. So now the rest of us are going to read through them. If they're good enough, we're going to get feedback, go through their logs, interview these people as well, which is another, half-hour commitment, but really multiplied by how many people are in that interview. We're doing the log reviews. We're talking to these players, getting some feedback. If they have references, great. We're going to talk to the old references to make sure they're going to be a good fit for the guild, because that's important for both them and us. But it's a lot of work. It's a ton of work to really mentor these players. We assign a mentor to every single applicant, essentially, to ensure that we're not wasting their time and they're not wasting our time in terms of, can they commit to this level of rating? Can they execute at this level and get all those things done?
Well, I'm going to step back because one of our viewers asked. I have an important question. We talked about it a little bit on an individual level.
Mm-hmm.
But he says, when do you sit DPS who fail mechanics and their DPS isn't that great when it's keeping a group from getting a clear? And that does fall under the leadership. When do you make those decisions?
You have to decide. So take a step back and take a look at, well, what are the goals of your team? If it's a nice community little team of we're going to do whatever and make everybody happy and Care Bears their boss to death, that's fine. You keep whatever friends you want in there, right? At the same time, if people are underperforming, whether it's their own performance in raid or not keeping up in terms of the requirements of mythic pluses or gear or azurite or whatever, then you need to have those conversations of, well, why is that not happening, right? Are they missing something? Are they just not able to handle this level of rating? Maybe that's what it is. But yeah, if you keep players around that are so severely underperforming, that's going to hurt the rest of your team, because your strong players are going to say, oh, well, Why are we letting so and so get by when they're the GM's friend or the GM's girlfriend or whatever, and the rest of us are working our asses off, right? Like that's going to really hurt morale, and it's going to breed that kind of toxicity into your team. And you as leaders need to be responsible for those teams and those players. So if someone's underperforming, well, help them fix it, right? There's tools at your disposal to help them fix it. And if it's still not happening, you've given them enough chances, and how many chances you give them is up to the raid lead and the team. Well, then you need to probably sit them out.
Well, and we just had a follow-up question that actually is a very good one. My problem from a leadership perspective is how do we sit people who do mechanics well but don't do the DPS or vice versa, especially if the class is needed, like Warlocks on Goon.
I don't know if needed is absolutely needed. There's plenty of parses where players are doing Gahoon without Warlocks, and unless you're talking about a mythic level, but players are more than able to do these bosses without the requisite class composition. We have a really melee heavy roster. We're doing a lot of these encounters with melee heavy raid teams. So yeah, and from a leadership perspective, sometimes people are going to do mechanics really well, but not be able to DPS. And sometimes, really most of the time, fights come down to mechanics, right? I'd rather have a player that is above average in general, can do mechanics, than somebody who is a glass cannon, can do a lot of DPS, but dies all the time and cannot do mechanics at all. Cannot do interrupts, can't stand in the right spot, can't do all these things, and they can only be relied on for tunneling the boss.
Well, but you do have the 7 rogues, 4 warlocks, and all of these things because class stacking is a thing.
It's so stupid.
So you have to, within developing your strats, you have to come up with a strat that works for the team composition that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it does mean that you bring in somebody that's not as great at DPS because they bring a warlock portal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes you need to do that, right? Sometimes if you can, you'll class stack, as much as you can. We're not at a point where we're gonna, have people re-roll for 7 rogues and 4 warlocks because we want to get a kill that much sooner. I do believe a lot in integrity and integrity of the guilds and the teams rather than in cheesing the crap out of encounters. If your raid team allows and you've got all those guys, fine. Or if your guild has mains and alts, fine. But we don't really do that. So we don't really stack 10 rogues, 7 rogues, whatever to down the encounter. It's up to those guilds.
With that being said, how do you set the tone for your raid? Because that's setting the tone for your raid right there.
Yeah, you know what? You need to set the tone. You need to set those expectations of what you have for the team, right? So every night we set our goals. This is what I want to get done for tonight. These are our goals as a team. I want to get these bosses down and work on this next boss. That's our nightly goal. And you need to, again, communicate those things, make sure they're crystal clear to the rest of the team, and communicate those expectations to everybody. So whether it be, again, the Azurite stuff, dungeons, item levels, what you're doing, how much time you're spending, people get to have lives and they get to have off nights, but within sort of the scope of what the team is doing. The other big thing is leading by example. And you want, if you're a raid leader out there, you want people to listen. You lead by the numbers, right? You lead by numbers of performance, you lead by experience, you lead by your effort, and you lead by the overall performance that you're doing in a raid setting. You need to know the encounters, and you need to lead with all that stuff going into it. So if you're a raid lead and you're not flasking and you're not potting and you're not using foods, why should the rest of the raid do it? Right? You have to set that example.
Well, since I cook for y'all better be using it.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, and I think that goes to, sometimes you have some really great people that would make fantastic leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And but they're missing something. Maybe they're not as skilled. So for example, when I started this raid team, I am not a raid leader,
mm-hmm.
and I didn't want that position. So I needed somebody who could lead by example. And the gentleman that I picked to help lead the team that I'm on, I think have done a really good job for being new leaders. But there's always growth and there's always improvement. And the one thing that I've noticed within the development, especially as you've branched out and added a stronger leadership team around you, is that the performance is very important for the raiders to be able to listen to you or to listen to your veterans. And they're going to listen to somebody who is, doing a great job as well as leading. But I do know that raid leading has affected a lot of numbers because some of your best players are not quite as good as they used to
Oh
be
yeah.
because they're raid leading.
You talk to any raid lead and they're going to tell you the same. Like, ask for a percentage, right? What percent of HPS or DPS are you losing by effectively raid leading, by calling everything out? And most are going to tell you 20 to 30%, right? Like, that's the good rough indicator of how much performance I'm losing by watching everything and watching what's going on. And then I think that's been a very rude awakening for some of our new raid leads who, don't have the same performance as they did when Sparty was raid leading. So it's interesting to see from that perspective, at least.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot of the time commitments.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of time to raid.
Yep.
It takes a lot of time to play this game at this level.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely does. It's sacrifices, right? There's only so many hours in a day, whether you want to podcast or you want to raid or GM or do all those things or have a life, you might have to sacrifice some things. And sometimes it's sleep and sometimes it's social life and sometimes it's schoolwork, whatever. I've been through it all. I've raided 6-7 days a week. But at the end of the day, time you enjoy wasting, people like, why are these people playing Warcraft? Well, time you enjoy wasting is not wasted time, right? We're doing something we enjoy. It's something that we love doing. It's something that brings us, enjoyment and fun, and sometimes it's a challenge for us. And at the end of the day, the players that I'm working with are better at the end of the day. The community that we've built is great. I'm happy seeing people happy. So there's that. I mean, it's important. You have to find something you absolutely enjoy doing. And sort of to close off our podcast, the raid leading aspect. And people have asked, well, what does it take to raid lead? What does it take, right? What are some of the qualities? And I'm going to leave you guys with one final thought here for our podcast. You need confidence. You need big balls. And, well, Sparty, how big are your balls? Listen, I'll tell you how big my balls are. My balls are bigger than 2 of Sloopbag's beautiful bald heads duct taped together. I've been in the middle of shit that would make you guys piss your pants right now. Vanilla to Legion, pre-nerf Muru, broken bosses, top world rankings. I've underhealed encounters before it was cool, 23-man, 40-man bosses when they were current, but there's no medals on my chest. I'm not any hero. I'm a raider and a raid leader and a guild leader. And we're not in the business of making heroes, we're in the business of discovering mythic raiders. Raiding is a commitment to your team, to yourself, and to your teammates ultimately. If you want to prove that you have that commitment, put in the time, put in the effort, and execute. And with that, guys, we're going to sign off for this evening. Thank you for watching and for listening. Have a good night, be excellent to each other, and as always, live your life heroically. Have a fantastic evening.